Welcome to the It's Been Said podcast. I'm your host, Executive Director Lisa Ramey. Today's episode is a special edition of the It's Been Said podcast. Dr. Dana Schon, Associate Executive Director of Professional Learning, will discuss her perspective on leadership life fit. She'll offer her insights on this topic periodically over the coming months. Let's hear from Dana.
Hi, this is Dana Schon, Associate Executive Director of Professional Learning with School Administrators of Iowa. Thank you for joining me for the Leadership Life Fit podcast. In this episode, we will be discussing how multitasking is a myth and how multitasking depletes our energy, robs us of productivity, and negatively impacts our quality leadership life fit. This was a painful exploration for me because I've always prided myself on being the ultimate multitasker. I would be celebrating all that I thought that I was getting done simultaneously. But the reality was that I was draining my brain and my energy and much less efficient than I thought. Well, let's dig in. Multitasking really is a myth. Our brains lack the structure, lack the ability to perform two or more conscious tasks simultaneously. So it is impossible for us to multitask. What's actually happening is that we are task switching, and this is happening with different degrees of rapidity. So in some cases, I can switch very quickly from one task to another. Let's say, for example, you are writing an email and you are also listening to a podcast, and you might be catching some of the words of the podcast. And while you're doing that, you're really not able to focus on and comprehend what's in the email. And then you switch back to the email, and maybe you realize you just borrowed a word from the podcast and put it into your email, and none of it makes sense because our brains do not have the capacity to multitask, even though we perceive that they do and gain confidence in our ability to multitask, or should we say rapid task switch. In fact, research would show, unfortunately, because I think I'm in this category, people who multitask most frequently are often the worst at it. What's happening for those of us who are multitasking and celebrating our success, we're actually creating a situation where we struggle even more so to filter out irrelevant information. So we're actually cheating ourselves and our brains out of the opportunity to refine our ability to attend and focus. Let's take a look at, dive into this idea of what's actually happening from a neurological and cognitive perspective when we choose to task switch. Well, what's happening is that our brain is depending on that prefrontal cortex to process information. So let's say that you're working on your newsletter this week and your brain is working to remember the template you've used before, attach to that template new information, help you organize that information into that template in a way that makes sense. But then you're interrupted by an incoming email or a buzz on your Apple Watch, or maybe you have some music playing and it shifts to a catchy Christmas tune or some other song that is appealing to you. And so your brain is now taking the resources it was using to organize and help you produce that newsletter and directing it to this other task you've given it. What's the name of that song again? Or who's buzzing me on my watch? Or is that email something that I need to attend to? And so it's no wonder we find ourselves more and more exhausted, especially in today's day and age where so many things competing for your time and attention, when our brains are being taxed to the max in terms of diverting and returning to attention in the different tasks in which we are that we are trying to accomplish. And so what we find is when we're multitasking, we think we're being more productive, but research is showing that we are actually decreasing our productivity by 40%. In fact, one study, I think this is so interesting, found that our errors increase exponentially when just when we are interrupted just for 2.8 seconds. In this study, that 2.8-second interruption doubled the number of errors made on a computer task. A couple of other things that are problematic and create challenges for us that impede a quality leadership life fit. There's cognitive decline associated with multitasking. It's comparable to the performance drop seen in individuals who stay up all night. So imagine getting your board report together after having an all-nighter, or imagine getting up to lead a staff meeting after you have been up all night. Well, when you set yourself up to task switch all day long, you are creating the cognitive condition as though you stayed up all night. One study found that just even having your smartphone beside you while you were attempting to complete a task was enough to cause decline in cognitive performance. And so we recognize that asking our brains to switch tasks, even if we think, oh, I'm listening to this podcast while I'm going for a walk around the building. Okay, you may be able to do that, but when you catch sight of something else, another observation, you're creating another task switch moment for yourself. What is the implications of this? So we've talked about what's happening in our brains and some of the performance challenges. There are also an increase in stress, frustration, and perceived pressures of time when we choose to task switch or multitask. And when we are constantly fragmenting our attention, we stop ourselves from getting into that flow. You know how it is. You're into something, maybe you're reviewing student data, you're setting those goals, and you're in the flow. And you look up and you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe 30 minutes have gone by. It's really challenging to get into that state of peak performance or deep concentration when we allow our attention to be diverted. Generally, to get into that deep concentration takes about 15 to 30 minutes of uninterrupted focus. How often do we get that? And how often are we the cause of our opportunity to have 15 minutes of uninterrupted thinking? So not only is it tough to get into a flow state when we allow our attention to be diverted, it can take an average of 25 minutes to recover from an interruption and get back to an original task. If we even remember what that original task was. I don't know about you all, but sometimes I find myself in a task, I let myself get distracted, and then I forget what it was that I was doing or what I needed even to come back to. That's probably more a sign of age, but also I would say certainly the cost of task switching. All right, so what can we do to retrain our brains? Remember, we've got this awesome thing, neuroplasticity, that allows us to rewire our brains, and we can do that. We can rewire our brains for better focus. So one of the things that you might try as you think about striving for a quality leadership life fit by reducing or minimizing your task switching behaviors is to apply the 20-minute rule. So think about committing to a single task for 20 minutes with all notifications turned off and put your phone out of sight and out of reach. Give yourself 20 minutes to write that column you've wanted to write, to submit to your local newspaper, or to engage in that podcast or that message that you want to craft and send out to your school community. So 20 minutes, give yourself the gift of 20 minutes. Another strategy you might think about to keep your attention focused as opposed to divided is to look around your work environment. Where are there opportunities in your workspace for interruptions to happen? What agreements do you have with your office assistant when your door is closed? What agreements do you have with yourself when you're working on something? Do you have notifications turned off on your phone? Do you silence your phone and your laptop when you're in the middle of something and then set a sticky note aside to remind yourself to reactivate if you need to. If you need to task switch, only use it when you are engaged in low stake activities. So listening to your favorite podcast while you're exercising, or listening to that podcast while you are doing chores around the house, mowing the lawn, doing your dishes, whatever that might look like. Help your staff and your team to optimize your meetings by, number one, keeping them to the point and brief, and then encouraging active participation. So keep focused, have a clear agenda, keep focused on the agenda, encourage active participation, and invite agreements around attention and focus. What does it mean to be fully present? Some of you may have heard of the Pomodoro technique, where it's blocking amounts of time. So specific blocks of time, similar to the 20-minute rule, but maybe it's 30 minutes here, 40, 50 minutes, so that you can get some high-level projects done or make progress on those high-level projects that require some deeper levels of work and thinking, and an opportunity to get into flow. Another strategy that can build that attention muscle is meditation. And if you've never meditated before, then you might, there are all kinds of apps out there to help you get started. But it's as simple as taking, if you think you're going to go for 3 minutes, go for 1 minute. And simply get comfortable and notice your breath. And feel your breath all the way down into your diaphragm. And as you become more comfortable and able to focus on that breath, add another minute, add another minute. And there is a rich repository of research around the power in meditation of developing your attention muscle. And if your mind wanders while you are focusing on your breathing, that's okay. Catch yourself, come back to your breath work. That's very natural, it's very common. But being able to be with yourself and your breathing is very healthy for a variety of reasons, but certainly in growing our attention muscle. So as you think about the many distractions in your day, consider how you can be focused, how you can give yourself the gift of focus and attention on the task at hand, and know that you are increasing your productivity, you are reducing your stress and your frustration, and you're maximizing your time and actually being much more efficient than you would be if you were task switching. Thank you for joining me. Best wishes as you work to find focus for a quality leadership life fit.